My name is Gail, and I am 52 years old. For 29 years, I sat in the same chair at every Sunday dinner at my mother-in-law's house. That chair, positioned to the right of Lorraine, was more than furniture. It was my place in this family. No one ever dared to sit there. Until last Sunday, when a pregnant woman I had never met walked in and claimed it as her own, and my husband just stood there watching. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below with your location. If you have ever felt replaced in your own life, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. What happens when the DNA results arrive will change everything you think you know about loyalty and betrayal. I met Warren 31 years ago when I was working as a cashier at a grocery store in downtown Michigan. He had just graduated from college and was doing an internship at a small local bank. He came through my line every Tuesday and Thursday, always buying the same things: a turkey sandwich, a bottle of water, and a pack of gum. It took him 3 months to finally ask me out. Our first date was at a diner 2 blocks from the store. He was nervous, spilling coffee on his tie and apologizing more times than I could count. But there was something genuine about him, something real. He talked about his dreams of climbing the corporate ladder, of making his mother proud, of building a life that meant something. I listened and found myself believing in those dreams too. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. The ring was small, a thin gold band with a chip of a diamond that he had saved 6 months to buy. I did not care about the size. I cared about the man kneeling in front of me with tears in his eyes, promising to love me forever. Our wedding was modest. We held it in the backyard of his mother's house because we could not afford a venue. Lorraine, my future mother-in-law, had been skeptical of me from the start. I came from a working-class family. My father drove trucks. My mother cleaned houses. We did not have the pedigree that Lorraine expected for her son, but I was determined to prove myself. In those early years, I worked 2 jobs while Warren climbed his way up at the bank. I cooked, cleaned, and stretched every dollar until it screamed. When our son Kyle was born, I took only 2 weeks off before going back to work. When Meredith came 3 years later, I learned to function on 4 hours of sleep. Through it all, Warren traveled for work. Sometimes he was gone for weeks at a time, visiting branches in other states, attending conferences, building his career. I held down the fort. I became both mother and father to our children during those long absences. I never complained. I believed we were building something together. 15 years ago, I finally did something for myself. I took every penny I had saved from birthday gifts, tax returns, and loose change collected over decades, and I opened a small bakery. Warren was not enthusiastic. He thought I should stay home, be available for him and the children. But I needed something that was mine, something I had built with my own hands. The first year was brutal. I woke at 3 in the morning to bake. I worked until 8 at night serving customers. There were months when I barely broke even, but slowly word spread. My cinnamon rolls became famous in our town. My wedding cakes were booked months in advance. The bakery became a gathering place for the community. Lorraine surprised me during those years. She started coming to the bakery every Wednesday afternoon, ordering a cup of coffee and a slice of whatever pie I had made that day. At first, I thought she was checking up on me, looking for reasons to criticize. But over time, our conversations grew longer. She told me stories about her late husband, about the struggles of raising Warren and his brother Frank alone after her husband's heart gave out. I realized that beneath her stern exterior was a woman who had fought her own battles. She had married into a family that looked down on her too. She had clawed her way to respectability through sheer force of will. In me, she saw a reflection of her younger self. Our relationship transformed. She became not just my mother-in-law, but my confidant. The Sunday dinners that I had once dreaded became something I looked forward to. Sitting in that chair beside her, I felt like I belonged. The chair itself was beautiful. Solid oak with a high carved back and a seat cushion covered in teal brocade. It had been in the family for generations, originally belonging to Lorraine's mother-in-law. The position to the right of the head of the table was reserved for the most trusted woman in the family. For 29 years, that woman was me. I remember the last Sunday dinner before everything changed. It was late August. The leaves were just starting to turn. Lorraine had made her famous pot roast, and we all sat around the table laughing about Kyle's disastrous attempt to cook for his new girlfriend in Chicago. After dinner, as I helped Lorraine with the dishes, she took my hand and said something that still echoes in my mind. She said, "You are the best daughter-in-law I could have ever hoped for." I squeezed her hand and told her I loved her too. I had no idea that in just 2 weeks, another woman would walk through that door and sit in my chair. A woman with a swollen belly and calculating eyes. A woman my husband had been hiding from me for months. 6 months before that Sunday dinner, Warren came home and announced he had hired a new assistant. Her name was Jocelyn. He described her as hardworking, sharp, quick on her feet. The bank was going through a busy period, and he needed someone reliable to help manage his schedule and paperwork. I thought nothing of it. Warren had always had assistants. They came and went over the years, mostly middle-aged women, who organized his files and reminded him of meetings. I never felt threatened by any of them. But things started to change. Small things at first. Warren began leaving for work earlier than usual, claiming he had morning meetings that could not be rescheduled. He started coming home later, sometimes after 9, saying he was swamped with projects. His phone, which he used to leave face up on the kitchen counter, was now always face down or tucked in his pocket. I told myself I was imagining things. 29 years of marriage meant something. We had raised 2 children together. We had weathered storms that would have sunk other couples. Warren loved me. I was sure of it. Then came May. The bakery was in its busy season, with weddings and graduations keeping me at work 12 hours a day. One afternoon, I decided to surprise Warren with lunch. I had made his favorite, a roast beef sandwich with horseradish sauce, and I thought it would be nice to eat together like we used to when we were young. I walked into the bank and headed toward his corner office. Through the glass walls, I could see him sitting at his desk, but he was not alone. A woman stood beside him, leaning over his shoulder to look at something on his computer. She was young, maybe early 30s, with long brown hair and a fitted dress that hugged her curves. She was standing too close, much too close. When I opened the door, they both jumped apart. Warren's face flushed red. He stammered something about reviewing quarterly reports. The woman Jocelyn turned to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. She was polite, saying it was lovely to finally meet the famous wife she had heard so much about. But her gaze swept over me like I was furniture insignificant and easily overlooked. I handed Warren his lunch and left quickly. On the drive back to the bakery, I could not shake the image of them together. The way she had been leaning into him. The way he had looked guilty when I walked in. That night I paid attention in ways I had not before. I noticed that Warren's desk in our home office now had a small framed photo I did not recognize. When I looked closer, I saw it was a picture of a group at what appeared to be a company retreat. Warren was in the center, and right beside him stood Jocelyn, her hand resting casually on his arm. I did not say anything. I did not know what to say. Instead, I called my oldest friend Denise. We had known each other since I opened the bakery. She was a regular customer who eventually became family. Before retiring, Denise had spent 20 years as a private investigator. She had seen every kind of deception human beings could devise. Over coffee at my kitchen table, I told her what I had observed. The late nights, the hidden phone, the way Jocelyn had looked at me like competition rather than the boss's wife. Denise listened without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her cup and looked at me with serious eyes. She said the signs were not good. She said she had seen these patterns 100 times, but she also said she hoped she was wrong. She offered to help if I ever wanted to know the truth. I thanked her, but said I was sure it was nothing. Warren would never betray me, not after everything we had been through. 2 weeks later, Warren came home with news that made my blood run cold. He told me casually over dinner that Jocelyn was pregnant. He said it the matter-of-factly like he was reporting the weather. She had no family nearby, he explained, no support system. As her boss, he felt responsible for making sure she was taken care of. I asked why that was our concern. He said it was the right thing to do. A good Christian response to someone in need. I looked at my husband across the table, searching his face for the man I had married, but his eyes would not meet mine. He focused on his plate, cutting his steak into precise squares, avoiding my gaze entirely. That night, I lay awake for hours. Warren slept soundly beside me, his breathing deep and even. I watched his chest rise and fall and wondered how someone could sleep so peacefully while carrying secrets that could destroy everything. I could not live in uncertainty any longer. The not knowing was eating me alive, turning every interaction with Warren into an exercise in suspicion. I needed the truth, whatever it might be. I called Denise and asked for her help. She did not hesitate. Within a week, she had begun surveillance on both Warren and Jocelyn. I felt sick, asking my friend to spy on my husband, but I felt sicker not knowing what was happening in my own marriage. The first report came 7 days later. Denise met me at a coffee shop on the other side of town, far from anyone who might recognize us. She slid a manila envelope across the table, her face grim. Inside were photographs. Warren and Jocelyn at a restaurant I did not recognize, an upscale place with white tablecloths and candles on every table. In one photo, they were holding hands across the table. In another, Warren was tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his expression tender in a way I had not seen directed at me in years. My hands trembled as I flipped through the images. Each one was a knife to my chest. But I forced myself to keep looking. I needed to see it all. Denise had more. She told me she had traced a series of payments from a bank account I did not know existed. Warren had been renting a luxury apartment downtown for 4 months. The lease was in Jocelyn's name, but the rent came from his secret account. The apartment was fully furnished, 2 bedrooms, top floor with a view of the river. I calculated the payments in my head, rent, utilities, furniture, and other expenses, nearly $200,000 in 6 months. That money was more than my bakery made in an entire year. Warren had been siphoning it from somewhere, hiding it from me, while I counted pennies to keep our household running. Denise squeezed my hand across the table. She said she was sorry. She said she had hoped to find nothing. I thanked her and took the envelope. I needed time to process. I needed to decide what to do next. That night, I waited until Warren fell asleep. His phone was on the nightstand charging. He had changed his passcode months ago, claiming it was for security purposes. But I knew his patterns. I knew he always used important dates as passwords. I tried our anniversary. Nothing. I tried Kyle's birthday. Nothing. Then I tried Jocelyn's hire date, a date he had mentioned casually just once. The phone unlocked. What I found in those messages destroyed whatever hope I had been clinging to. Hundreds of texts between Warren and Jocelyn dating back 5 months. They called each other pet names. They made plans for the future. They discussed the baby. One message from Warren read, "I cannot wait until we can be together openly. The baby is going to change everything." Jocelyn had replied, "I know the timing is hard, but once your mother passes, we can move forward. I hate that we have to wait." Warren's response, "She is 79. It will not be much longer. And then I will tell Gail. She will be hurt, but she will get over it. People always do." I read that message 3 times. He was waiting for his mother to die so he could leave me. He was planning to abandon a 29-year marriage for a woman half my age. And he assumed I would just get over it. I took screenshots of everything, emailed them to myself, to Denise, and to a private account I created just for this purpose. Then I put the phone back exactly as I had found it. I walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and sat on the cold tile floor. I did not cry. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left only an empty shell. 29 years, 2 children. Countless sacrifices. All of it meant nothing to him. When I finally stood up and looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. But somewhere in those tired eyes, I saw something else. A spark of anger, a flicker of determination. I was not going to roll over and accept this. I was not going to let Warren and Jocelyn write the ending of my story. If there was going to be an announcement, I would be the one making it. The next morning, I called Lorraine and asked if I could come over. My voice must have betrayed something because she did not ask questions. She simply said yes and told me to come right away. I drove to her house in a daze, the envelope from Denise sitting on the passenger seat like a bomb waiting to explode. Part of me dreaded this conversation. Lorraine adored Warren. He was her firstborn, her pride, the son who had made something of himself. Telling her the truth might break her heart, but she deserved to know. And I needed an ally. Lorraine met me at the door with a cup of tea already prepared. She knew something was wrong the moment she saw my face. We sat in her parlor, the same room where I had sat so many times over the years, and I told her everything. I showed her the photographs. I showed her the financial records. I read her the messages, including the one about waiting for her to die. Lorraine listened in absolute silence. Her face, usually so expressive, became a mask. When I finished, she stood and walked to the window, her back to me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she turned around, and I saw something I had never seen in her eyes before. Cold fury. She said, "I have suspected for months that something was wrong. Warren has been distant, distracted. He canceled 3 Sunday dinners with weak excuses. I thought perhaps work stress. I wanted to believe it was work stress." She paused, then continued, "But I should have known better. I should have recognized the signs, because I have seen them before." I asked what she meant. Lorraine sat back down across from me and told me a story I had never heard. She told me that Warren's father, her late husband, had also been unfaithful. Years ago, when Warren and Frank were still young, her husband had an affair with another woman. That woman had gotten pregnant. I stared at her, unable to process what she was saying. Lorraine nodded slowly. "Frank is not my biological son. He is the child of that affair. The woman died in childbirth, and my husband brought the baby home and begged me to raise him as my own. I was devastated, but I agreed. I loved that boy, as if I had carried him myself. No one outside the family knows the truth. I understood then why Lorraine had always seemed to carry a weight behind her eyes. She had lived with betrayal for decades. She had swallowed her pain and raised another woman's child with grace and love. She looked at me with tears threatening to spill. "I did not want you to suffer the way I did. I hoped Warren would be different from his father. But it seems the apple does not fall far from the tree." I asked her what we should do. Lorraine's expression hardened. She said we needed proof about the baby. If it was Warren's child, there would be legal and financial implications. But if it was not, if Jocelyn had been lying, then everything changed. She told me she had connections to a reputable laboratory that could perform a DNA test quickly and discreetly. She knew the family doctor, Dr. Harrison, who could facilitate getting Warren's sample without raising suspicion. And if Jocelyn was as calculating as she seemed, she would jump at the chance to prove the baby was Warren's. It would cement her claim on his money and his future. I agreed to the plan. We would arrange for the DNA test, and we would wait for the perfect moment to reveal everything. Before I left, Lorraine took both my hands in hers. She said, "Whatever happens, you are my daughter. Not by blood, but by choice. Nothing will ever change that." I hugged her tightly, drawing strength from her words. Then I went home to prepare for war. Over the following weeks, Lorraine and I worked together in secret. She convinced Warren that she wanted to meet the woman who was so important in his life. She framed it as wanting to welcome someone who was carrying what might be her grandchild. Warren was surprised, but pleased. He thought his mother was finally coming around. The DNA test was arranged. Jocelyn, confident in her claim, agreed to the prenatal testing without hesitation. She saw it as validation, as proof that she belonged in this family. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. I contacted a divorce lawyer that Caroline, a friend of Denise, recommended. I began documenting everything, preparing for the battle ahead. I moved money to an account in my name only. I made copies of every financial document I could find, and through it all, I smiled at Warren across the breakfast table. I kissed him goodbye each morning. I played the role of the unsuspecting wife while counting down the days until Sunday. The day of the dinner arrived with a cold autumn wind that stripped the last leaves from the trees. I woke early and dressed with care, choosing a deep navy dress that Lorraine had given me for my 50th birthday. I put on simple pearl earrings and the diamond pendant that had belonged to my grandmother. I wanted to look like myself, like the woman I had always been. At Lorraine's house, I helped with the preparations. We set the table with the good china, the crystal glasses, the silver that had been in her family for generations. Everything looked perfect. Everything was in its place. Kyle flew in from Chicago, confused about why his grandmother had insisted he come home for a regular Sunday dinner. Meredith took the train from New York, equally puzzled. I hugged them both and told them only that tonight was important and I needed them beside me. They knew something was wrong. I could see it in their eyes, but they trusted me enough not to push for answers. At 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Lorraine nodded to me, and I took my position in the parlor out of sight of the front entrance. I heard Warren's voice, cheerful and oblivious, introducing Jocelyn to his mother. Jocelyn's voice was honey dripping with false sweetness. She complimented the house, the decorations, the lovely family photos on the wall. She sounded like someone rehearsing for a role she intended to play for the rest of her life. When they entered the dining room, I stepped out to join them. Jocelyn saw me, and her smile flickered for just a moment before she recovered. She was wearing a white maternity dress that emphasized her 6-month belly. Her hair was styled perfectly. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like a woman who had already won. Warren introduced her formally, calling her his indispensable right hand at work. He said he could not imagine running the bank without her. He did not look at me as he spoke. Kyle and Meredith stood rigid, their expressions carefully neutral. They had not been told the details, but they sensed the tension crackling through the room. Lorraine invited everyone to take their seats. Warren moved toward his usual chair on her left. Kyle and Meredith found their places. And then Jocelyn did something that made my blood freeze. She walked directly to my chair, the chair to the right of Lorraine, the chair I had occupied for 29 years. And she sat down. She settled into the cushion, smoothed her dress over her belly, and smiled up at me like she had every right to be there. I looked at Warren. He was staring at his plate, refusing to meet my eyes. He said nothing. He did nothing to correct her. Kyle started to speak, his face flushed with anger, but I held up my hand to stop him. I walked calmly to the end of the table and took the only empty seat remaining, the seat farthest from Lorraine, the seat for guests and strangers. The dinner proceeded in excruciating silence. Lorraine served the food with mechanical precision. Jocelyn tried to fill the quiet with chatter about her apartment, her plans for the nursery, her excitement about becoming a mother. No one responded beyond polite murmurs. I watched her as she talked. I watched Warren as he avoided everyone's gaze. I felt the weight of the envelope in Lorraine's desk drawer, waiting for its moment. When dessert was served, I stood up. Every eye in the room turned to me. I said, "I have an announcement to make." Warren finally looked at me, his face draining of color. I continued, "I know everything. I know about the apartment. I know about the money. I know about the messages and the plans you made together. I know that you have been waiting for your mother to die so you could leave me for this woman." Jocelyn's mouth fell open. Warren lurched to his feet, stammering denials that died on his lips. I kept going. And as of yesterday morning, I filed for divorce. The room exploded into chaos. Warren shouted that I had it all wrong. Jocelyn burst into tears, claiming she was being attacked. Kyle and Meredith stared at their father with expressions of dawning horror, but Lorraine remained seated, calm as stone. She reached into the drawer beside her and pulled out the white envelope I had seen her place there hours earlier. She said, "There is one more thing." Lorraine stood and placed the envelope in the center of the table. She looked at Warren with eyes that held decades of disappointment. She said, "This is the DNA test. The results that will tell us whether this child belongs to my son or not." Jocelyn's tears stopped abruptly. Her face went pale beneath her careful makeup. Lorraine continued, "Jocelyn was eager to have this test done. She believed it would prove her claim. She believed it would give her a permanent place in this family. But we all know that the truth has a way of revealing itself." She pushed the envelope toward Warren. "Open it." Warren's hand shook as he picked up the envelope. He fumbled with the seal, finally tearing it open and pulling out the single sheet of paper inside. He read it. Then he read it again. His face transformed from white to red, from confusion to rage. Lorraine asked what the results said. Warren threw the paper on the table. His voice cracked as he spoke. 0%. The baby is not mine. Jocelyn stood up so fast her chair tipped backward. She started babbling excuses, saying the test was wrong. There must have been a mistake. She could explain everything. Lorraine cut her off. "There is no mistake. The test was performed by a laboratory I have trusted for 40 years. It was conducted at 2 separate facilities to ensure accuracy. Both results were the same. You are carrying someone else's child." I watched Warren turn on Jocelyn with an expression I had never seen before. Pure betrayal. The bitter irony was not lost on me. He was experiencing exactly what he had done to me. He demanded to know who the father was. Jocelyn refused to answer, but Denise's investigation had already uncovered the truth. A delivery driver named Lucas, who Jocelyn had been seeing long before she started at the bank. She had gotten pregnant by him, but saw a better opportunity in Warren, a wealthy, established man whose family had money and status. Lorraine produced a second folder, more photographs, records of Jocelyn's relationship with Lucas, evidence that she had planned this from the beginning. Jocelyn's composure shattered completely. She screamed that we had no right to investigate her. She threatened lawsuits, claimed we were harassing her, said she would destroy us all. Meredith stepped forward, blocking the doorway. She said calmly that Jocelyn was not going anywhere until they were finished. Warren collapsed back into his chair, his head in his hands. Everything he thought he had built with Jocelyn was a lie. The future he had planned, the child he believed was his, the new life he had been secretly constructing, all of it crumbled in an instant. But I felt no satisfaction in his pain, only a profound weariness. Lorraine was not finished. She walked to my end of the table and stood before me. She reached into her pocket and pulled out another envelope smaller than the first. She said, "I have been thinking about my estate for some time, about who deserves what I have built, about who has truly earned a place in this family." She handed me the envelope. Inside were legal documents transferring ownership of the lake house in northern Michigan, the house where Lorraine had spent summers with her husband, the house that Warren had always assumed would be his. Lorraine said, "This belongs to you now, not because of what happened tonight, but because of who you have always been. You built a life when no one believed in you. You raised my grandchildren with love and grace. You have been more of a daughter to me than my own son has been a worthy heir." I could not speak. Tears blurred my vision as I looked at the documents, at Lorraine's signature, at the proof that someone believed I was worth something. Warren lifted his head. His voice was broken when he asked if his mother was seriously giving his inheritance to his wife. Lorraine did not even look at him. She said, "You made your choices. Now you live with them." Kyle crossed the room and put his arm around me. Meredith joined us, forming a protective circle. The three of us stood together while Warren sat alone, abandoned by his own scheme, betrayed by his own mistress. Jocelyn slipped out during the commotion, disappearing into the night. No one tried to stop her. She had already lost everything she came for. The months that followed were both the hardest and most liberating of my life. The divorce was finalized in 3 months. Warren tried to fight it at first, claiming I had conspired against him, that I had manipulated his mother. But the evidence was overwhelming. The secret accounts, the messages, the apartment. The judge saw through every excuse. I kept the bakery, I kept our family home until I was ready to sell it, and I kept the lake house that Lorraine had given me, the place that would become my sanctuary. Warren lost his position at the bank when the scandal leaked. In a small town, secrets do not stay buried for long. Someone on the board had heard rumors, and when they investigated, they found irregularities in the accounts he had used to fund his affair. He was not just fired, he was disgraced. Jocelyn fared even worse. Her deception unraveled completely when Lucas discovered she had tried to pass off their child as another man's. He wanted nothing to do with her. She was left alone, pregnant and unemployed, her schemes in ruins. I tried not to think about them. I had my own healing to do. I started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Ellis, who helped me untangle 29 years of a marriage I thought I understood. She helped me see that I had been ignoring warning signs for years, sacrificing my own needs to keep the peace. She helped me learn to put myself first. I joined a support group for women rebuilding their lives after 50. We met every Tuesday night at the community center, a circle of women who had survived betrayals, losses, and heartbreaks of every kind. In their stories, I found pieces of my own. In their strength, I found courage. Kyle visited every month. He and Warren barely spoke anymore. My son had seen his father's true character and could not forgive the lies. Meredith came home for Christmas and stayed 2 weeks helping me pack up memories I no longer needed. And Lorraine remained my rock. We continued our Wednesday lunches, though now they were at the lake house instead of the bakery. She would drive up in the afternoon, and we would sit on the porch watching the water, talking about everything and nothing. She told me once that she had never regretted her choice to stand by me. She said Warren had broken her heart, but I had helped mend it. She said family was not about blood, it was about who showed up. That first Christmas after the divorce, I sat at Lorraine's table again. This time I reclaimed my chair, the seat to her right, the place of honor. But it felt different now. It was not about position or status. It was about belonging, about knowing I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Meredith made a toast. She raised her glass and said she was grateful for a mother who taught her what strength looked like. Kyle added that he was proud of me for standing up for myself. Lorraine simply smiled, her eyes glistening. I looked around that table at the people who truly loved me and realized I had lost nothing that mattered. I had lost a husband who did not deserve me. I had lost an illusion of a marriage that had crumbled long before I knew it. But I had gained clarity. I had gained freedom. I had gained myself. A year later, I stood on the porch of the lake house at sunset. The water was painted in shades of gold and pink. The trees whispered in a gentle breeze. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt completely at peace. I thought about everything I had been through, the love I had given so freely, the betrayal that nearly broke me, the strength I found when I had no choice but to be strong. I realized that Warren's affair was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it was also the best. It forced me to wake up. It showed me who my real family was. It taught me that I was worth more than I had ever allowed myself to believe. The chair at Lorraine's table was just wood and fabric, but what it represented was irreplaceable. It was my place in a family that chose me, not because of obligation or tradition, but because of love. Jocelyn had sat in that chair for one dinner. She thought she was taking my place. But you cannot take what was never about furniture. You cannot steal a position that is earned through decades of loyalty, sacrifice, and genuine connection. In the end, she left with nothing, and I left with everything that mattered. If you are watching this and going through something similar, I want you to know that you are stronger than you realize. The people who betray you do not define you. The people who stand beside you do. Do not be afraid to fight for yourself. Do not let anyone convince you that your worth depends on keeping the peace. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand up, speak the truth, and walk away from what no longer serves you. And if you are lucky, you might just discover that the people who truly love you have been waiting in the wings all along, ready to catch you when you fall. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had someone try to take your place in your own life? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that they are not alone. And remember, no matter what chair someone tries to steal from you, your true place in this world is something no one can ever take. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this community. I wish you strength in your struggles, peace in your healing, and the wisdom to know your own worth. Until next time, take care of yourselves. You deserve it.